Welcome to the Game Informer Show. I am your host, Tim Turry. Ben Hansen can't be here this week, so I am assuming full hosting duties. But fortunately, I am joined by Kyle Hilliard.
Hello.
We got Joe Juba.
Yeah.
And Andrew Reiner.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so thanks for listening or watching if you're on YouTube. Basically, we got a lot of things in store for you in the show this week, but we kind of wanted to start off at the top, just kind of acknowledging that the president of Nintendo died. Satoru Iwata passed away last weekend at the age of 55, which was a huge, way too young, huge, surprising tragedy.
Yeah.
For the industry and you know, for Nintendo fans in general. But we're going to give some space at the last half of the show to kind of reflect on Iwata's career and kind of, you know, share some memories of the games that he worked on while at Nintendo. So, but to kick things off, to kind of start things off, I know that Reiner and Kyle, you guys have been kind of involved. Well, actually, and Joe, like all of you have been playing what little new releases there are right now. And I've just been playing a lot of Batman. I've been playing a lot of Witcher, stuff like that. Stuff we've been talking about for what feels like months at this point.
You're playing good games.
Right.
Well,
I have not been.
Batman counts as a recent game, right?
Yeah, it's June, end of June, right?
Yeah.
So.
And now I feel like we're well into July, but
Have you beaten it?
no, I haven't actually.
Okay.
It's weird. Like the story progress did this thing where like I was at like 39%, and then I had a big battle with the Arkham Knight, and then I jumped to like 80% completion in the story.
Yeah. They don't know what they're doing with percentage.
It's
Because then it slows down after that again.
yeah.
That's
weird.
It's absurd. And
Math is hard.
I've been ignoring a lot of the side quests too, because there's one I haven't been ignoring. I don't want to give this away, but there's one character who's just sort of patrolling the skies.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And every time I, get a heads up that he
Captain
might be
Airplane.
Drop everything.
Captain Airplane.
That's who you're going after.
that famous Batman villain,
Yeah.
Captain Airplane.
But let's kick it off with you, Reiner. What have you been playing?
Well, I'll kind of build off the Batman one. Yesterday I played the Batgirl DLC.
Yeah.
A Matter of Family, it's called. And it's not super great.
Oh no.
Batgirl, it's developed by Warner Brothers Montreal, and who did Batman Arkham Origins, the prequel game to Rocksteady's trilogy. And they did a great job of establishing Batgirl as a cool character. She's very agile, resourceful. She can strike fear into her the Joker's cronies that she's going against.
Can I ask a dumb question quick about DC stuff? So I know that Batgirl and Barbara Gordon / Oracle are all sort of the same.
Oh, joke.
I don't wanna-
Spoiler,
come
man.
on,
Come
man.
on. He's still playing the game.
But is this the kind of thing where it's like there are multiple Batgirls, like there are multiple Robins in the continuity, or like is the Batgirl that you're playing
It's like a flashback.
Is that Oracle?
This is Oracle. You're playing as her
Okay.
pre-Arkham Asylum, so it's before the tragedy that put her in the wheelchair.
Gotcha.
There's another Batgirl in the comics, but
There's plenty,
Arkham
yeah.
has not
Batwoman.
addressed any of them.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, she's a cool character. Has the ability to strike fear into enemies in a kind of clever way, where you're using gadgets to interact with the environment. But the mission she's on, going against Joker to save her father, it's just really uncreative. It lacks any kind of like visual punch or big set piece moments. It's just kind of moving from one little battle to the next. It only lasts an hour though. It's very short. But the story doesn't really grip you, anything like that. The only thing that's really redeeming about it is a side story, which is tied to these carnival games where you're playing like match 2.
What?
Or
That sounds opposite.
yeah, or you hit this, that hammer game where you got to hit the hammer up to the
Test
bell.
of
Test
strength
your
or
strength,
whatever?
yeah.
I want
So
to
you
say
solve
test your
these,
might,
and you're rewarded for solving these or winning these games by getting these audio recordings, which go into the history of the amusement park, and that's where you're at in this game. It's like a new area that's not in Arkham Knight, and it's really fascinating the story behind it. And there's one villain in particular who's kind of sewn into all this, and you learn who he was before being, the alias you know him as the Arkham villain. And I'll leave it at that. But
so there's a good twist in there.
yeah, so if you play the Batman games for the gameplay, you're not going to get much out of this outside of Batgirl being pretty cool. But if you like those little story wrinkles, you definitely want to see it for this one little side story.
Is this pulling a lot from? Remind me, what's the name of the comic that's that pivotal turning
Killing
point.
Joke?
Killing Joke. Does it pull a lot from that, or
No, not really.
No.
That's what I thought, because the whole premise of Killing Joke is Gordon gets kidnapped by
Right.
Joker.
Right.
That's pretty much your connection.
That's it, huh?
And it, basically at the end, I'm not going to give anything away here, but you battle the Joker and Harley, and then that's kind of it.
Harley is wearing her like original outfit, which
like
is kinda
the
cool.
proper, like sort of weird
animated series.
mannequin kind of
Oh,
looking
okay.
The Jester.
clown
Yeah,
Jester. That's
yeah.
the one. Yeah.
Joker has a top hat. That's worth pointing out, I think.
Yeah, he's young and healthy.
Or not
That's
at all.
young, healthy, and alive.
Joker
yeah.
with a top hat. I mean, I just think of the Hatter. You know what I mean?
Right.
It weirdly stood out to me when we played in the test chamber because you died once and we got to see the Joker. You know how it gives the black background, the enemy comes in and taunts you. Well, Joker came in and was like, I killed you, and he like leaned his head and the hat like fell over and he caught it. Like he was very much like, I have a hat. Behold, I am different this game.
Now, Kyle, I don't think you spent enough time dwelling on the fact that Reiner actually died. So he didn't do it on his first try.
Yeah, no, he failed.
No first triner
Yeah.
involved here.
But
Sorry.
one last thing about this.
Don't
is,
change the subject.
This is on GameInformer.com right now. People playing the game have found a really cool Easter egg, which points to it actually shows the full character model of a Justice League villain that is hidden in this game, which again kind of points to maybe what's coming next. Arkham Knight is very heavy on Superman stuff. There's some Arrow Industries talk in there, or Queen Industries talk in there. But maybe they're going Justice League next. That would be cool.
Well, that's the Batman versus Superman film is setting up presumably some Justice League.
It makes sense from a marketing or
Yeah.
They've announced two
synergy type of
Right.
perspective.
I think they've announced 2 Justice League movies, actually. Like, committed to, like, we are making these.
Oh, they did. All right.
Yeah.
after the Batman
Of course,
Superman.
yeah.
Okay. So,
But the bottom line on the Batgirl DLC isn't that it's not bad because it's only an hour and not necessarily great
Right.
value.
It's just uneventful.
It's bad because it's just not that fun to play.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they just didn't do anything creative. It felt very rushed. Like, just make it function. Like, do Predator mode, do combat, and get it out there.
Make something we can charge people for.
Yeah, like it doesn't have those big visual or set piece dynamics that you see in the main game.
So does Batgirl control similarly to like they do a good job in the game of passing off control to other characters, whether it's Nightwing or Catwoman or someone like that. And I really like those moments where you're like switching from like Batman's slower, like stronger combos to like the really fast, nimble characters.
She's fast and nimble. And,
Okay.
but brutal too. Like
Okay.
when she takes guys down, does those finishers, you definitely feel it. You're like,
All
oof,
right.
that would hurt.
Okay, but so she doesn't have anything that sets her move apart. Like, still, if there's a guy that has a shield, you're still going to hit,
You're still doing
Y
the
and
same
hit a couple
things.
times,
Yeah.
or B, and yeah.
Yep, same mechanics, and then she has some tag team moves with Robin as well.
Okay.
So you do get that difference of characters again, but and there's some good banter between them too. Some sexual tension, if you would. But
Speaking of sexual tension, I am
yeah,
Let's do it.
I am really excited for the Michael Keaton Batman and Batmobile DLC.
that's next month, right?
I know.
August,
I was happy about the Adam West Batman costume. I like that. I like that there's a Dark Knight one, from like Miller's take from the Dark Knight Returns and stuff. But do we have any idea when we get to ride Keaton's Batmobile?
I think it's later next month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they just said somewhere in August, I think. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know how they do that. Like how the Batmobile like transforms into tank mode, or
Yeah.
what, like does it have its own special animation set for it, or what?
Right.
But, man,
Yeah, it's I want to know if it just turns into basically what is the Arkham Knight's tank or what.
I hope it doesn't do anything, and it just looks really awkward.
Yeah, it just starts sliding around.
Just like this doesn't make any sense.
I was looking at the picture last night and of the Keaton bat suit, and the symbol actually has like the extra bat prongs. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but they actually changed the design of the bat symbol from Batman to Batman Returns, where it has like an extra
yeah.
set of prongs, and it looks super dumb. Like they made a mistake on the original Batman movie.
Oh, really?
These extra, yeah.
Yeah.
But they made sure to include it in this character model, which I really appreciate. Like even though it looks stupid, they kept it in there.
So maybe the Matter of Family, that's the name of the DLC?
Matter of Family,
A Matter of
yeah.
Family. Maybe the Family Matters DLC isn't a must play for people. But you also have been playing a game featuring another icon from pop culture in
Yeah.
another city that's just as good as Arkham Knight, right?
Or what's
right?
left of the
Yeah. This is Joe's fault. I'm playing Godzilla.
What's the name? What's the full name of this thing?
Godzilla.
Oh, okay.
They really
I was
went for it.
expecting some elaborate.
No,
subtitle.
Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla, Wrath of the Monsters,
Destroy All
Kaiju Fest or
Monsters.
something.
Kaiju Fest.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
Kaiju
good
Fest.
That'd be
addition.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not super great. I'm working on the review now. It should be going out there soon. But man, they went for it in terms of like authenticating the cheese and kind of campiness of those old Godzilla movies,
Like zippers and all.
Yeah, the guy in the rubber suit, the way he moves, all that stuff, the sound effects, everything. Even his villains just look really cheesy.
Do things on the monsters wiggle that probably shouldn't wiggle? Like,
Yeah. You just look at these monsters like, how is that even animating? And it's like, maybe there's strings pulling its head or something.
Okay.
But it's so repetitive and clunky in its execution. Like, they did all these great things with making the monsters look cool and making them look like they did way back in the day on the silver screen. But the game itself just feels like it was just kind of slapped together last second. Like,
is this like a one-on-one fight type situation, or what?
So there's multiplayer. There's no local multiplayer, but there's online multiplayer where you can do 2-player, which makes sense.
Right.
2 monsters battling, and then weirdly 3-player, which every time I've played it online is 2 guys will engage, 2 monsters will engage, and one will just kind of stand in the back, just kind of stand in there like waiting for these people to like settle the matter and then pick off the one that has reduced health.
Perfect. Is the way that the gameplay mechanics work, it just doesn't really make sense for 3 people to duke it out?
Yeah,
at the same time?
It should have been 4 or 2.
Do people get locked into animations a lot, or like?
Yeah, and that's one of the big things too. It's like I'll start attacking and like throwing a 3-hit combo with Godzilla like he does,
right?
His famous 3-hit combo. And
Don't
then
forget to air juggle.
And then the enemy will just like Mothra, the larva version of Mothra, will just be like spit in my face, and it's like interrupts my combo, or Mothra will just like ram me with his dumb head.
Well, I'm sure it's just as easy for you to interrupt their combos.
No,
right?
No, it doesn't work that way.
Wait, larva version of Mothra?
Yeah, they have everything. They have baby Mothra right out of the egg. You see the egg hatch.
Oh,
even.
cute.
Yeah, it's adorable.
Yeah, that's one word to describe it. Sure.
Flying, colorful Mothra, the demon Mothra.
Batra?
Yeah, they have everything. Rodan, King Ghidorah. What are you looking at me like that for?
Gamera.
I'm not believing Batra is
No
a thing.
Gamera. That's a different
Gamera.
universe.
So that's not Godzilla then?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
The 64 version of Godzilla.
I'm sorry, Joe.
Honestly, like I love like old horror movies, but Godzilla is one of the biggest blind spots that I have.
You should watch the 90s movies, by the way. Like, there's a run, like the SOS saga or something they call
Emmerich?
it.
Like
What?
the
No.
Like
the Jeff
The ones from
Goldblum?
Japan. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, there's like 3 movies there where there's one like Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. That's really great.
And there's straight up like Gojira as well too. But
Yeah.
that's not the original, is it?
That is,
Okay.
that's the one that kicked it off way back when, and they re-released it, maybe a decade ago
Okay.
here.
You should talk about the prime minister mechanic of the game. That's super weird.
Sure. So,
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has to do with the difficulty setting, right? Is that okay? You can explain
So
it.
when you're going through the single player campaign, which is real, that's the part where it's really competitive or really repetitive and just really boring, where you're just Godzilla's drawn to these G energy generators and he wants to destroy them and feed on them.
Okay.
And that's what makes him grow. But mankind is trying to save, their generators, their energy, and their cities, because they built them stupidly in the middle of cities. And
Some of them live there, I think, too. So that's probably important.
yeah, they live there too. But as you're doing this, they send out forces against you, like tanks and all this stuff, helicopters, airplanes. But the level of resistance you face is tied to who the prime minister is, and that is the difficulty setting. Is easy is a prime minister who's just like kind of a pacifist, like use Godzilla as like a dog. He even references it. He's just like, he's no different than the family dog. And
Is
it's
he
like,
just tearing down buildings?
yeah, it's like, yes, he is. He's not like peeing on your
lives?
fire hydrant. He is like destroying your town.
If a dog bites one person, it might get put down, let
Right.
alone take down an entire office building. What?
Yeah, so then normal is like more aggressive than hard is like they're sending the entire army against you, basically.
That is the most confusing structure for a
Yeah, so
difficulty mode.
And it's set up like Star Fox, where you can kind of go between, you get to pick from 2 levels each time, where it's like, there's like 3 levels or 3 layers of levels.
Okay.
So you bounce, it's like, okay, this prime minister just got fired. They got this new person. Okay, she got fired, back to the old dog loving guy. Oh, all the way down to like some new other guy. So it's like a revolving door for this position, this high ranking position.
So is the highest prime minister then just this like ridiculous like military warmonger guy who?
Not really. I mean, they're all kind of suave business people. But
Do you see them?
yeah, they talk on screen every once in a while.
To Godzilla? Or just to the news?
Yeah, the prime minister's like, why?
Just on a building shaking their fists?
they're like,
Dear Godzilla, an open letter to Godzilla.
yeah, it's like you see them in their office and they'll be like, as you're tearing down buildings and stuff, it's like, why is Godzilla doing this?
Is this narrative framework as confusing as it all sounds?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
it's
right.
super because like it's funny because you're Godzilla and you're destroying things and like so you beat the level, you destroy the G energy or whatever, and you're all like, yeah, I did it, I'm good at this. But then in the top corner, the narrative is like, man, we just can't shake this giant monster. Like he is terrible. It's like, wait, should I be sympathizing with them or should I be
Yeah.
proud of myself for destroying stuff? Like I don't know how to feel.
You feel very conflicted, I feel like. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a Telltale game.
Pretty much.
So the resistance that the city gives, is that because I feel like it's more about fighting other monsters, but are you just like swatting down helicopters
Yeah,
and stomping
you're
on
doing
tanks
that,
a lot?
and the controls are atrocious. You get used to kind of the tank control. You move Godzilla with the analog stick, but then you turn him with R1 and L1.
What?
So he's like slowly rotates. He's this big lumbering thing, and he
Sure.
moves like
so they're
this
trying
speed.
they're trying to convey some weight with the controls.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the targeting system, so he has his energy breath or whatever, his G energy breath, and you can't aim that. Like it's just kind of like he's kind of lined up to a helicopter. I'll hit circle and see what happens. Okay, he got it. Otherwise, he'll just like spit at the ground or something.
Because I saw I got a glimpse of a little bit of the gameplay when I peeked into your office, and it looked like it was a slightly off over the shoulder where you're just kind of like not directly behind Godzilla. Is that the perspective for the entire?
No,
entire
you can
game?
move the camera
You can
around.
move a lot. Okay, gotcha.
And then as you're the resistance never killed me. Like mankind stands like they don't stand a chance against
Okay.
you whatsoever. But other kaiju will come in, other monsters, and they'll give you a run for your money. And again, like the whole weird blocking system, like you got to roar to block attacks or something. It doesn't work very well, but they just seem like they have the upper hand at all times.
Cool.
Like cancel out your attacks.
Is this only Tokyo, or is there a variety of cities, or what?
Yeah, it's just you're just kind of moving along the coast there or whatever. But
Okay.
So it seems to have a bit of like a sort of B-movie vibe, or I mean, well, obviously,
Yeah.
But like the voice work, the visuals, how does it compare to something like EDF? Does it have the same kind of like?
see, EDF's just
Charm?
kind of fun, like
Yeah.
it's just those mechanics work. This one, it's just like you're like, I wish this played better. And then it is so repetitive. EDF, at least you get some variety in what you do and what you're shooting,
Oh yeah, I love EDF.
and leveling up your character and all that. This is just like, okay, we're at a new location, destroy 3 generators, new location, more generators.
Yeah.
I must have destroyed hundreds of generators, and it's just they didn't put any thought into like changing it up at all.
If your sole purpose is just to destroy generator after generator, I just don't see what would keep you going in that at all.
And the big allure is for those big Godzilla fans to unlock these other monsters and play them online. There is some fun online when you're doing like one-on-one, but again, you're kind of bound to this really simple kind of control scheme and kind of clunky control scheme. But there's like a kind of a encyclopedia of monster details, which is kind of cool to read through. That's done really well. But yeah, outside of just being the biggest fan of these creatures and wanting to see them on the screen, there's no point in playing this.
Yeah.
It's not one of those things where it's like, I'm kind of interested. You'll just be turned off by that gameplay.
I don't get why publishers. Well, I mean, I guess it's just a cash in is really what it amounts to, because like the excuse of like, well, if you're a big Godzilla fan, then you'll like seeing them. But like big Godzilla fans like playing good games too.
I hope so.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah, it's the fan service. Those little touches that are in there, like, oh, that guy has that move. That's super cool. That's in there. But yeah, I mean,
But
yes,
if it's
it
no,
is a
if
bad
it's no
game.
fun to play, if it's no fun to earn that move, or I mean,
Right.
like you said, unlocking the characters. It sounds like unlocking the characters is just this
It takes a long
terrible
time.
chore.
Yeah, it is.
It's like even fans do not deserve that kind of
Right.
treatment.
Right. And I'm not
just to get
saying,
that stuff.
like, buy it right away, fans.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
That's the amount that you're going to get out of this is like, okay, that was kind of cool, but again, you're still stuck with a bad game, right?
Who's responsible for this?
It is Bandai Namco publisher, and the developer is Natsume Atari
Okay.
Incorporated.
Interesting. What's it out on?
PS4 and PS3.
Okay, just in case you want to know what to not buy it on.
Right. And you're going to look at the box art. The box art is super badass. Like, it looks great.
It was like black and white. And,
Yeah, it's probably the
cool.
best part of the game.
But speaking
art.
of PlayStation 4 and of God,
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
And sexual tension.
Yeah. Godzilla, God of War,
Oh,
God of War Remastered.
Yeah.
The third game, right? Joe, you've been
Yeah.
playing a little bit of God of War 3.
Yeah, I've been playing a bunch of that.
Yeah.
It's pretty much like did you guys all finish God of War 3? Did you play
Oh,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, big time.
Okay. So for you guys, you may not need to play this game.
Is it like God of War 3? When that came out
Well,
on HD, in HD last?
This is like, I think when they first started doing this trend of like remasters, like was Tomb Raider like the first big one that we saw? I think that like
It was.
definitive, whatever.
Yeah.
And then Last of Us came out. I think people's expectations were not super high. So it's just like, oh, this game I love, but I'll play it on my new console. Or I didn't play this last year, so I'll play it now.
Right.
But like, we're at the point now, like God of War 3 is 5 years old.
yeah. What do they say in the box?
So-
Like in HD again?
Yeah.
HHD.
So it's like, I mean, it performs better. It's 1080p. It's 60 frames per second for the most part, and so it runs well. It looks great, but like, I felt like the PS3 version ran well and looked great. So, and whereas a lot of those other like definitive editions include like, hey, we had these DLC missions that you now get to do, and tons of costumes and customization and weapons and stuff that like we released after the fact, and now you just get.
Yeah, God of War 3 was sort of a contained deal, wasn't it?
For the most part,
yeah.
it had some downloadable costumes, a lot of like pre-order exclusive costumes
Okay.
and stuff that are included in the package, but like you can't use them until you beat the game. As is normally the case with God of War costumes, that you need, because they're not just cosmetic. They'll usually give you like 200% experience
Right.
bonus or something like that. So they wait until the second playthrough, but like, so that means for your first playthrough of this game, if you played the first one, like, it just feels so similar. On the other hand, this game is so good.
It's a super good game. Would you say it's the high point of the series?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah, without a doubt.
I mean, it came out on PS3. It was definitely the best one on PS3. The first two on PS2 were incredible games in their own right, but obviously like they were doing amazing things on the PlayStation 2 and they had such a scale to them that, I mean, people didn't think was possible until they saw stuff like God of War and God of War 2. But then 3 is just like totally it's just like sky's the limit at that point.
Yeah, and all of that stuff. I mean, all that stuff in the remastered edition just comes through loud and clear. Like those opening moments when you're like on Gaia's back as
Yeah.
she's climbing the mountain and Poseidon's coming after you and all that. Like all that stuff just looks better than ever. But if you're looking for that extra angle or that extra depth, that incentive to be like, I played this before, but I want just like, that little bit of variety, that little thing to just make this feel somehow new.
Yeah. Is there like a photo mode? Or
Yeah,
they did that? Okay.
That's it. Is like
Alright.
is a photo mode.
But isn't that even limited compared to like the photo modes in other games?
Well,
That's
yeah.
what I read in your review.
Yeah, well, it's a little more limited because, like, I mean, the Last of Us photo mode gave you more like camera control.
Yeah, and God of War 3 had no camera control, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, when you're doing a photo in God of War 3, it's basically a lot of like panning the camera and a lot less like, rotating to find the perfect angle of everything.
So you can't
So-
even like you can't pause the action, like wrap the camera like around to the other side to get a different view.
I mean, like, I guess I didn't try it in every area of the game.
Okay.
So, like, I mean, maybe there are times when you could, but like every time that I pulled up photo mode to be like, I wonder if I can like move the camera here.
It was just like a pan.
Yeah, I
see,
never
I
could.
don't like really take photos, but I like the photo mode just because.
What people share online.
Well, not even that. Like in The Last of Us, what I really like doing, like when I replayed it on PS4, is I would pause, like these important moments, and just take a chance to like pull the camera around and look at everything from every angle. And it sounds like you can't really do that in God of War.
And if I remember correctly, though, too, in Last of Us, they did restrict you sometimes. I don't know that they gave you
a little bit
camera control 100% of the time either, but
pretty much. Like I don't think I ever encountered anything in Last of Us or like even Shadow of Mordor or Infamous where you couldn't fully take the camera like 360 degrees around and like take a look at different things from different angles.
Right.
It just lets you look at the environment in new ways, which I thought was cool. But yeah.
That's what was cool about those photo modes. It was like, you have like Delson from Second Son like whipping his chain, and then they'd take a look from like down the chain at him that was cooler than even the official screenshots that they released for the game and stuff.
I do remember, this isn't specific to God of War, but I do remember when or not specific to God of War 3, because when I went to go do one of the features on one of these games, I think it was the God of War 3 cover story that we did was, like they were aware that one of the main complaints about that series from players was that you didn't have camera control.
Yeah.
And there was something that they certainly explored, and I think it was Stig Asmussen, who's the director of God of War 3, who'd said like, if you like, I can give you camera control. Like I could sit you down with a build of God of War 1 with camera control, and you will see that it's not fun. It's not the same.
I always loved that those games don't have camera control. They've designed it so it's not necessary.
Yeah.
They understand that limitation. It's not like you're missing out on some degree of depth to the game.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I think it's just kind of funny, the assumption that like the players play and they think they want camera control, and they think, well, they do want camera control, but they think that this is something that hasn't occurred to the developers.
Exactly.
When in fact the developers like did it and iterated on it and just decided that like this does not make our game better.
Right.
You know. So and anyway, that's maybe an explanation as to why, I don't know about the photo mode, but at least for like the core gameplay of God of War 3, you don't really have full control.
I have really fond memories of that game as well. But going back to it, was there anything that you were just sort of like, this part hasn't aged that well, or
No,
or that in a post Bayonetta, kind of world like Bayonetta 2 and stuff?
I don't know. I guess for me, that game was so far ahead of its time back in 2010 that I feel like it still feels like a good, modern, fun experience. There is still the weird like button press minigame thing that goes on for those kills a lot, but God of War 3 made it a lot better than the previous ones, I think, by making them a lot less intrusive on the gameplay. So instead of being like, bam, right over all the cool action is a big triangle button. Right. Now they sort of appear on the periphery of the screen,
which was
so
nice.
You can be looking at the center, but sort of know you need to hit circle or triangle or whatever. So, like all of those things still feel like modern, and some of those cutscenes, or like when you actually kill some of the gods, those executions are just so brutal and ridiculous that, I mean, you just watch and like even having seen them before, I was they were still jaw dropping for me.
Yeah.
So
one thing I like about that series is being so far removed from playing it, 5 years ago you said, on PS3. All my memories of it are starting to bleed together. Yeah. And that's something you don't really see a lot in game series. Usually like where each moment is in each of those games, because they're usually pretty different. Right. Or, like your character has evolved to a degree, but Kratos is still just this mad dude, from start to finish of this trilogy. And I don't know where all these little moments are. I know a couple, like when he turns into the giant and stuff like that.
Not a lot of extreme character development going on.
No.
Just different shades of mad and pissed off.
But it's just like a nice, one shell that they all have it in. This bundle of rage from this guy.
Kratos was shouting. What game was that?
Right. Oh my God! Yeah, he was mad.
That was the second one.
He was mad at one of the gods.
Yeah, he was saying that he was going to kill the god,
the Greek gods.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, boy,
classic. What a fun adventure. Joe, I think one thing that people might be wondering is like God of War 3. They may have a PS4. They might not have played. They might not have owned a PS3 or a PS2 maybe. Yep. Like, is this a decent jumping on point? Do you think, going back to it, or should people absolutely go and pick up the God of War collections for PS3?
See, I'm always the wrong person to ask about this kind of stuff, because I am someone who does get really invested in these sort of long-term series. I've been playing. It's super weird to think about, by the way, that God of War is like 10 years old now. Like the original one came out like 10 years ago. But like I have been playing that game since the beginning. So I naturally think that the best experience for these is just sort of like, go on that journey with the characters or whatever. But I guess if that is not something that is as big of a concern for you, I don't think that like you won't feel lost in this game by any stretch. You can still enjoy the gameplay. It gives you enough background on like, okay, that's Zeus. Kratos wants to kill Zeus. That's the main thing you need to know. Like that's established. Mm-hmm. You'll be okay.
The big beat you're missing is his origin story and why he looks the way he is and why he's mad.
Yeah. So
you only get that in the first one, really.
Yeah, you won't know like you won't like playing this. You wouldn't necessarily even know that like, wow, it's called God of War because Kratos actually was the God of War for a bit after like the first game. You know?
Ares is the God of War for a big chunk of the first game, and he earns it.
Yeah. So you'll miss out on things like that. Yeah, like Reiner said, the origin story, what exactly like Zeus, why Kratos is so mad at Zeus and all of that. But I mean, like, again, God of War, I think there really are some cool story moments, but it's not like it's inspired by mythology, but it's not the super like heady literary kind of story. It's like Kratos is an angry guy with blades on chains and he wants to use them to cut things.
And if you're going at that angle, Bayonetta 2 and Bayonetta 1 for that matter, it's like I cannot decipher anything that's going on in those stories. But that does not depreciate my enjoyment of those at all.
Right.
So
I'd say if you have been thinking about starting with the original God of War and that's something that interests you, start there and work your way up to 3.
Right.
If you just want to play a fun action game, you don't really care about the story or the stuff behind it, play 3, you'll be fine.
What did you give this new version?
Ended up giving it a 9 out of 10.
Good score. Good game.
Yeah.
Kyle, have you been playing anything else you want to talk about before we click over to emails?
Not really, actually. After I just sort of marathoned Batman. Like I just dropped everything for Batman. I put my kid to bed and I stayed up till like 4 a.m.
He dropped his kid into the bed.
No, like that.
Good night, sweetie. I'm gonna go play Batman.
If I can ever swing it, that is just the way I prefer to play games.
And I don't do that often these days. Like especially with a kid. Like I don't really. I try to be more responsible. Try to go to bed at a reasonable time. But like so far this year, Batman's been the one that's like. That's it. So after finishing that, I'm kind of revisiting Witcher. I played a little. I've forgotten the name. Our review should be going up soon. The soccer car game,
Rocket League.
I did play. I played a few rounds of Rocket League and had a good time. I scored a couple goals and I was very proud of myself.
I have that downloaded. I can't wait to dive into it.
Yeah.
Everyone says amazing things, but it just doesn't compute with like. I understand that soccer with like race cars can be fun, but I haven't even seen a screenshot of it.
I would recommend when you start hit up the training. I did that. Like normally I would just kind of like, all right, I'll just kind of get the hang of it in the tournament or whatever. But
you'd skip it?
Yeah, because you don't have to do it. It's not even the first option.
Oh, you are actually involved in that local Minneapolis intramural car soccer league.
Car soccer.
That's true.
Yeah, my Mazda's all dinged up because I keep doing that. But
it's worth it.
But you learn a lot of tricks that I don't think I would have found out on my own.
Okay.
So when you go play, maybe you would have done it anyway. But I would go through all the training. Doesn't take too long, and you get to do fun stuff.
Just to back up one step. It was Ben Hansen who was raving about this originally.
Yeah.
And that, you raise an
him.
eyebrow to that. Whenever Ben Hansen recommends a game you haven't really heard of, you got to put that into perspective.
Ben doesn't.
Because he'll be like, Pizza Paparazzi, the best game of all time. It's on iOS. Play it. And you're like, they just pulled it because it doesn't work, Ben.
Ben Hansen does an amazing job. Ben Hansen does an amazing job of keeping current and playing a lot of different things. But he'll back some odd horses from time to time. And
best Wii game, Tank. Wii U, I think. Is he still on that?
I don't know. I think he was enamored by some certain novelty to it, but I think he might be thinking like spin the bottle and stuff like that he was really into. But the thing is I think enough people just sort of look at him as a boy who cried wolf, but he was way ahead of it on Rocket League.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we are all just slowly becoming believers. I'm going to play that very soon. But
speaking of current games,
I've
been replaying Peace Walker.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's relevant because
right,
Metal Gear Solid 5 is taking a ton of nods from that.
That's probably the one to play before 5, isn't it?
And that's the main reason I'm bringing it. I'm not just bragging that I'm replaying Peace Walker.
Wow. Joe, you own a copy of Peace Walker?
I'm bringing it up because, with Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain on the horizon, that's September 1st that comes out. If you're going to go back and replay any of the Metal Gear games, it seems like Peace Walker is going to be the one that has sort of the most direct story connections. So I'm sort of going back there to refresh myself on everything that was going on there.
That's just a month and a half away.
Wow, we are so close. I'm so excited for that game.
Joe, what are you playing it on?
I was going to mention that too. I'm playing on the HD collection on 360. Actually,
it's a good version of the game.
I mean, I have it on PSP also, but I didn't think those controls suited it super well. So I'm actually really enjoying the more traditional setup for it.
Yeah, that's the way I played it before we went and visited Kojima Productions in Tokyo last year for the cover story when Kojima Productions existed. But it was one of those things where I hadn't played Peace Walker at all. I kind of dismissed it because I'd played a little bit of Portable Ops and I wasn't in love with it.
Right.
And then I was just fell in love with I'm going to Fulton everybody. Let's attach balloons to everybody. Send them off to Mother Base. I loved I got into the Mother Base sort of is that more of like a macro game to it? Whatever the
the optimization of like I have a research team that I need to assign people to, and then mess hall team, and need to put people in there.
And that guy I drugged and kidnapped happens to be a good cook, so I'll put him in the kitchen. And going to that on that cover story and talking to Kojima and being like, will the Fulton recovery system return? And just the fact that he said yes, and just knowing that like combining like more traditional Metal Gear play. Well, I guess it's not traditional because it's open world, but just being able to kidnap everyone in an open world and send them back to your base. And then there's a revelation that it's goats and puppies and crates and vehicles and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do that so much.
They definitely realized that people loved that Fulton thing.
Yeah.
And especially, contrasted to portable ops, where the only way you could recruit people was by dragging them back to a truck just across
tedious.
the whole map.
I did it a lot too.
Yeah,
man, and I
me
hated
too.
every second of it.
But yeah,
I did like portable ops though. Also,
You're wrong. No, Joe, you're wrong.
I may
about
be
that.
one of the few, but I really got a kick.
I
out of
didn't.
that.
I never finished it.
with Peace Walker, I would recommend, play it, get a taste for the gameplay. If you really fall in love with it, keep going. But otherwise, I would probably recommend, like, once you get a feel for it, if you feel like you're going to drop off and you're interested, like, well, where did, Big Boss get his red mechanical arm and stuff? There's some great YouTube story summaries out there for people that are interested in getting the ins and out of that without having to play a lot of gameplay. It's a Japanese portable game. They took some nods from like Monster Hunter and stuff like that for mission structure and returning to maps. And so there's some repetition built in. So otherwise, I do recommend playing it and checking out like a YouTube summary.
I would also say the storytelling it's kind of hard to articulate, but like I feel like the storytelling of Peace Walker is just not as like tightly integrated or woven into the gameplay of it. They seem a lot more separate in that, like, all right, you're doing a mission, and then between missions there's like a little cutscene or something.
Yeah.
And I think probably until you get to some of the important stuff like way at the end, it just the story and the gameplay feel like almost different monsters, which normally in Metal Gear they're pretty much like inextricable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you're right.
Refresh my memory. Peace Walker does not have in-engine cutscenes, right? It's all like comics.
most of the cutscenes are
So that probably doesn't help,
comics.
right?
Yeah.
Because then there's a line between when a cutscene starts and
Big
ends.
time.
Where,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Still a good story though.
And there's no codec, so like all of the conversations and stuff are done through like pre-mission like recording tapes and stuff.
Right.
So
Well, cool. Glad to hear you going back to that.
anyway, I'm having fun.
And then, the other stuff I'm playing, like I mentioned at the beginning, is just trying to catch up on Witcher 3 and Arkham Knight. Get those open world games done at least before Metal Gear Solid 5 comes out, because I don't want to juggle 5 open world games.
Is the new patch for Witcher out on console yet, or are we still waiting?
I think we're still waiting.
It is
because they've
not
released
yet.
like a ton of patch notes
Yeah.
for it.
As of recording this, it's not out.
Yeah,
but
I did the story.
soon.
There were 93 items in the last patch notes, but not. They're like, here's the patch notes, but not the
Great.
update
It sounds
yet.
like they're going to let people customize how Geralt moves a little bit.
Yep.
Your crafting items aren't going to go into your encumbrance at all.
Oh, man.
Things like that. I'm really
be
excited
separate
for.
tab for books.
Yeah.
Oh,
little
man.
things. It's the little stuff.
Yeah.
And as a guy who just found out that you can swipe up on the touchpad on the PS4 to go straight into your map, just like it's the little things that.
And they don't need to do this.
No, they don't.
They just keep making the game better. That's great support.
It's a good legacy for them to try to uphold there.
However, for some of these things, I feel like they're things they should have known before the game even came out too, like the things for like the separate tabs for books and the crafting materials
But
in
it's
your
not
inventory.
terrible to get to
No,
the
no,
books.
no.
It's always
no.
up on top.
No. I don't mean to like they're definitely doing an awesome and cool thing by doing spending so much time on these updates and optimizing the experience. But for some things, or like that when it first came out and it had that tiny font size. I mean,
man.
the font size isn't even a whole lot better now. They increased it, but it's still kind of small, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like a pixel or something.
Yeah.
we all would have preferred all these things to be in place when it came out.
Exactly.
Right.
But in a world where games are shipped in a broken state, CD Projekt Red looks pretty good.
Yeah,
when they're
yeah,
doing
and
this,
they're definitely an example of what like developers can strive for in terms of continued support, free support.
Yeah.
After fixing a game.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So I think that's about it for what we've been playing. So stick around, and coming up next, we're going to be answering some emails and hopefully have some good conversations from that. Welcome back. For the next segment, we're going to go into some emails we have from our listeners and viewers. So every week we try to go through a batch of emails from everyone, and we choose one that we really like, and we make that our question or our email of the week. And if we've been sending like a little thank you, it's not much. I haven't officially said what it is that we send every week.
Used podcast shirt.
It is, right.
Podcast used shirt.
We have a closet filled of podcasting shirts, which you guys all made great choices. Kind of boring today, but
Sorry.
I
it is what it
dressed
is.
up.
There's something on the back that's really offensive. So
Oh,
Yeah, I watched the MLB All-Star game, and that's what they do. They take off their jerseys and give them to fans.
that's so smart.
So,
and we do have a formal wear section, as Joe can point out. But obviously, if you're not watching on YouTube, you don't really know what we're talking about. But anyway, the email that you can send those to is podcast@GameInformer.com. So let's kick things off here. Hi guys, since E3, first of all, this is Ryan from Seattle. Hi guys, since E3, I've been scouring the internet for any information on my most anticipated games. In doing so, I've watched and read plenty of interviews from a lot of developers, and some seem more personable than others. For instance, Sean Murray of Hello Games seems like a genuinely nice, smart, and overall likable person. Todd Howard of Bethesda Studios also seems to be a cool guy. As such, my question is, are there any developers that you personally like and or look forward to talking to the most because they just seem like decent people? Love the podcast, Ryan. I like this question because it also allows us to kind of make an interesting distinction where like Sean Murray is in a unique case because like that's a independent developer. And you find that a lot of indies get to be just really casual if they want to be because he has some deals, like Hello Games has some deals with PlayStation and stuff. But other than that, it's kind of, his company either sinks or swims. He doesn't have a lot of PR to wrangle him in.
Yeah, and they're not part of a big, massive PR marketing plan like a company like EA would have for like you can talk about this feature here, but not this feature. Or where we experienced that actually when Kim and I just went to go see Tacoma for our current cover story, and like Fulbright is. I think the whole studio is 7 or 8 people. I mean, it's just super small, and everyone there is like, yeah, well, I mean, whatever you want to talk about, we'll say what we know, So there's a certain sort of, I feel like there's just a little more openness about the content. Now, that's kind of separate from them just being nice people. I mean,
right.
I meet tons of nice people that like developers who, like we all like video games. We can always find something to talk about usually,
Yeah.
But that's my take.
One of my favorites I've talked to was Josef Fares, who did Brothers. He directed Brothers, and he's kind of in that same boat, being like kind of an indie guy. But he was just, I don't know, even like being in this industry and being like in this office, I don't know if I've heard anyone so enthusiastic about like the art of video games. Like one of my favorite things that he said is, Brothers is a game that you control 2 brothers with 2 control sticks, and I was asking him about like, did you ever consider that being co-op? And he was like, no, that game was exactly the way I wanted it to be. I would rather cut off my hands than make that game co-op and have it be played the way I didn't want it to be played. And I really enjoyed that kind of candor, and that sort of excitement. And he also had a really fun accent.
Reiner, anyone come to mind?
Yeah, I would say Ed Boon from NetherRealm, the creator of Mortal Kombat. He has been doing it so long, making games so long. He is so smart, and he's just a funny guy too. So every time I talk to him, it just ends up being like, I'll be like, wow, that was one of the best interviews I've ever done. And it's like yearly I talk to this guy, and I always think that. So yeah, hands down Ed. And I would echo the Todd Howard as well. Me too. Is a fun guy to talk to when you get the chance to. He's kind of hard to get a hold of now. Now that Bethesda things Fallout 4, it's just the biggest thing ever, and they're very much into that kind of PR driven campaign now.
Yeah, that's the thing. You'll find that the more and more a project is important, and they're speaking for a project, it's just like, well, so and so has to be very on message here. But for me, I feel like I got to interview Miyamoto a couple of years back. I think Reiner, you just were part of an interview.
Yeah, I just talked to him at E3.
And there's something about it. Like I know that Nintendo is always just very much on message too. Like they keep on brand a lot and they don't venture off too far. But I just felt like really at ease in that interview. And for someone like considering like there's such a language barrier, and Miyamoto is like maybe like the icon of the industry, he's the most important developer probably. It's just like, wow, this guy really put me at ease, and I feel like really comfortable in this conversation. He seems like a genuinely nice fellow.
Yeah, he's always smiling. You see the smile he has when he walks out on stage in the Nintendo Directs or whatever, and he's just like that in person too. When you talk to him, he's just a really happy-go-lucky guy.
Yeah.
And he's a pleasure to talk to.
I think that must be infectious because another good interview is AJ Onuma, Zelda producer. He kind of has the same qualities, always smiling, really cheery, really makes you relaxed, even though you're talking to the guy that's in charge of Zelda,
Yeah.
So
I want to give a little more of a specific example on my end too, because because I'm a big RPG fan, play D&D and stuff. I always have a good time talking to the folks over at BioWare.
Yeah.
Whether it's like Mass Effect or Dragon Age, we pretty much just talking about, I don't know, like characters and story and party members and like progression mechanics and all that stuff. Like you can get pretty down to like nuts and bolts with those guys and just have a really like interesting and satisfying conversation about that, which is fun for me. But
can I tell a quick Andy McNamara story?
Please.
So Andy and McNamara and I walk around E3 together, and sometimes we get roped into doing interviews and stuff like that. We're trying to get like the whole perspective of the show, like see every game we possibly can. One of them that we did that we were really excited about was when Mr. Walker was bringing out Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon. We talked to Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, and then the composer of Final Fantasy.
Uematsu?
Uematsu. So it was both of them in a room, and Andy and I are kind of nervous because we've never met these guys, and this was like a big moment for us.
Yeah.
And there's like PR everywhere, Japanese and American. And we sit down and we have our list of questions, and Andy immediately just goes off script, and he's like, so did you guys just like call each other on the phone and then just go to a bar and start drinking and be like, get drunk and go, yeah, we should make a game? And I was just like, oh my God. What? Like, I'm looking at the questions like, no, these are all really good questions.
I bet that was it, though, wasn't it?
And they looked at each other and they start talking to each other in Japanese. And I was like, we're getting kicked out of here. And then they look back at Andy and they laughed. They're like, that's exactly what happened. And from that point on, it was such a great interview. Like, it was just really relaxed. We were just kind of, just freely talking.
That's a good. You know what? I'm going to take a nod from or a lesson from the Andy McNamara School of Interviewing, and I'm just going to ask people the last time they got drunk.
Yeah, I was just like,
that's a break the ice question right there.
I'm drunk now.
You could tell they were amused, but at the same time they were like, that's basically how it goes. That's real life for you, right?
That's fantastic.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, so moving on from that question. This one's from Randall from Sterling, Massachusetts. I was watching last week's podcast, and you had a discussion about backlash for scoring games for reviews. First, let me say that I agree with Tim. Dead Space 3 is a fantastic game.
That's why you wanted to read that.
However,
question over. All right.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Question
Email
of the week. There you go.
Yeah. However, this brings up a question about the purpose of assigning numbers. When deciding on which games to buy, I often read multiple reviews to make my final decision. It is not the number that I'm interested in. It is the insight and criticism that the reviewer writes. I even have certain reviewers that I look to when choosing games for my wife and others for myself. Question, do you think it is possible to have a future that would have written or even video reviews without assigned numbers at the end? Thank you, Randall. The reason I picked this one is not only because, Joe is the reviews editor. Reiner, you spearheaded the reviews section of the magazine for a long time here. And also just because it's also worth noting that there are plenty of outlets that don't do reviews scores. So, yeah.
Yeah, my take on review scores is you have 5 seconds, you're on the internet, you click into a review, you see the score, you're like, oh, okay, I probably don't need to buy this game. It's just that instant, like, okay, I know what it is. If you want more details, read the review. The review should echo what that score is, right? But I just think scores are just really helpful if you don't have a lot of time. You'll see sites, maybe they don't have a scoring system. Like Kotaku, they say they don't do scores, but they do. They have yes or no is a score.
Yeah.
It's Roger Ebert had 2 thumbs up. There's different types of scoring. And if you don't see a score, they do usually try to have like bite-sized information that you could quickly read, like bullets, pros and cons.
Yes.
For people that don't have the time. So yeah, I could see a future where it is just the written word, but I think you're kind of doing yourself a disservice a little bit for people that don't have a lot of time. Yes, it is better to maybe do a review without a score in terms of just getting your thoughts out there and all that. But
you could spend an entire day reading every review online for a modern, like a current release.
Yeah, it would just be so time consuming. I love scores. I bounce around the internet on release day and just kind of see stuff. And if I find a score interesting, I think scores also bring up points of interest where it's like, whoa, this guy didn't like this, and then I'll read that review.
I mean, I think there's also the fact that you can, like, you cater to different audiences with text and scores also. Like it's possible for someone that maybe someone just isn't interested in reading, a huge review for something. They just want a quick like, hey, this game came out today. Is it worth it? And if they just want to get a quick score on that, like, I mean, I understand that there are a lot of people who are really into games who think that that's too much of a surface level assessment. I see where you're coming from on that, but like, there are some people who like that's what they're after, and a review with a score provides that.
Yeah,
and the people, because like, if you take away the score, the review is still the review.
Yes,
it's still the text.
Yeah, and
like, it's not like I'm sorry, Aaron, but just real quick. Like it's not like I play God of War Remastered, say I'm going to give this a 9, and then write a review that's like, okay, well, this needs to be a 9, so I'm going to write like the review is the same whether or not it has a score. It just it's just another sort of like way that audience that's interested in a more quick look at it can get some feedback.
Yeah, and any writer will probably tell you, like, I would rather have you read my review. I want you to, I spent a lot of time writing this review. Please read that. But the score is there to help you, like to guide you along. And maybe you wouldn't read it unless you saw that score. So, but at the same time, maybe you see the score and you get out of Dodge.
Yep. Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. I like having both options.
Yeah. And I also feel like there is room for a like quicker sort of critical analysis, like what we'd say is a 1-page review in our magazine or something, right? That's not super long, but has a score, has some text that goes along with it. And then if you really like Batman and you want a deeper dive, that's even more than a review, but like a much deeper analysis of like its place in the larger Batman fiction and how it compares to every other game and stuff like that's more than we can accommodate in a review in the magazine. But that doesn't mean that like we can't write those things. And maybe those kinds of analyses don't have scores on them, that it's just a different sort of like writing about games.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's about providing useful content for people, no matter how much time they have to present to it. If they're online, we're able to post a review that's outside the constraints of the printed word. And, the person who's flipping through the magazine, they also can just read the bullets and see the score if they want. It's all reductive to a certain point. We could write thousands and thousands of words on these games. We always have to rein it into some point. Numbers just an easy kind of go-to, I feel like. Yeah. So
the numbers in the headline too.
Yeah.
It's tons of variables that can bring people in to read.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or not.
Yeah. All right. So this one's from Phil from Philadelphia. It should be relevant given some of the stuff we talked about earlier. Now that Rocksteady is presumably finished with Batman, we'll see about that, and assuming that their next game will be a superhero one, what hero would you like to see them tackle next? And if they could do your dream hero game, what would that be? Because this opens it up beyond DC. Phil says, I would like to see them do a Spider-Man game, and for my dream game, a Marvel DC team-up game with the Justice League and Avengers going up against Darkseid and Thanos. Considering they're technically superheroes and it's a comic book, that rumored like Ninja Turtles one is absolutely what I would want them to do. Like a 4-player co-op Ninja Turtles. That's it. Keep everything the same. Just do
based
like Manhattan,
comic, right?
Yeah, make it darker like the comic,
huh?
like Manhattan. Like what they did with Gotham with Manhattan 4-player co-op. Same combat. It's fine.
Yeah.
So, that's mine.
It's tough because my answer would be Batman. Because like that's my favorite.
Just keep going.
That's my. I mean, like if you were to say if like this, a really great developer makes a really great superhero game, I would have said Batman because Batman's always been my favorite comic book hero person. I don't really. I mean, I do like the Spider-Man answer because I would be interested in their take on Spider-Man, but I don't really. I don't feel like I'm missing a superhero game, because they've made Batman. That's what I wanted, and I got it, and it's great.
I'm going to build off that, Kyle, and say yes again to Batman, but adding Superman and doing World's Finest. which is a DC comic series, what they kind of call Batman and Superman together.
Okay.
I guess they rebranded it now just Batman Superman.
Do they get along at any point?
Yeah, they
Sometimes?
they bicker a lot,
Okay.
but they're very different characters.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be cool to see that kind of dynamic of not passing the baton to Superman necessarily, but having your traditional Rocksteady Batman experience and then having a bigger open world to explore, maybe with Flight as Superman.
Well, yeah, he wouldn't pass the baton. Daredevil has the batons.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
It's a different comic.
Daredevil would be good too.
That's true.
He's very similar
That's
to,
a good point.
to Batman.
Especially with how dark, especially Arkham Knight got.
And like instead of investigating, you could like look through documents and stuff like that as a lawyer.
Feel your way through documents.
documents.
Yeah. So I don't have as deep of like a comic book knowledge as like Reiner, for instance, but pretty much like my favorite comic I've ever read was Kingdom Come. So like again, it's sort of a Batman Superman thing, but it's a little more like it's
Justice
a little more
League,
it's like it's Justice League. It's sort of grim thematically, but really interesting. On the other side of the spectrum, I would also like to see them maybe do, because like a lot of superhero stuff does have so much like gravity to it these days. I think it might be fun to see something that's a little bit more lighthearted, maybe like your Ninja Turtles example or something. Something that's a little bit more goofy, something that embraces maybe a little more old school superhero kind of comic goofiness. But
speaking of lighthearted comic books, I just realized that Rocksteady could probably do a great job with Sin City. Maybe the most lighthearted, but in all seriousness, like we know that aesthetic, like that sharply contrasted, like black and white with like signature colors like red or yellow that can pop against it, works well in games. And you take Rocksteady, who can, I bet they'd make an awesome.
It'd be
I want to do
fantastic.
a quick answer change real quick because I thought about, instead of thinking about my favorite heroes,
get one.
I thought about my favorite comics.
Okay.
Comic book series. And I would love to see
Archie.
Rocksteady.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. Well, actually, similar spelling, Akira.
Oh,
I'd really love to see Rocksteady
You just opened it up.
make like Neo Tokyo, and I want to drive around on kind of
That'd be
fantastic
fantastic.
stuff. Yeah.
All right. So that one was from Phil. Thank you. Next one is from Jerry from South Texas. Hey guys, I love what you've been doing at the Game Informer show, improving on the legacy of Matt Helgeson. Keep up the good work. Blah 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 blah. They wrote blah 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 blah. I recently introduced my younger brother to my old favorite cartoons, movies, and games. The original Pokemon, Star Wars, the original ones, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Some he loved, Pokemon, Ocarina of Time, and some he found subpar. He prefers the Star Wars prequels, which is common with younger audiences,
it is.
actually.
It's terrifying.
It is. My question is, what are some games or entertainment media that you have introduced to your younger siblings, relatives, children, and what was their reaction towards them? What do you guys think makes them decide one way or the other? Story, graphics, gameplay, characters? My regards to the GI staff. Jerry from South Texas. I wanted to ask this one because, we have Kyle and Reiner on. Both of you guys have little girls. And
Yes.
you're both huge nerds. So I think there's going to be some bleed over into that.
Yeah, so Evie, my little girl, she's 2.5 right now. And so I'll play games like Skyrim around here. And what I'll do is I'll just ride horseback through the world. And every once in a while, we'll see like a dragon up in the sky. She thinks that's really cool. I avoid combat at all costs.
Of course.
And if things do turn hairy, it's like, okay, we're going to turn it off.
Yeah.
it's the horse
Hit the guide button. Yeah, that's what she calls it, the horse game. Lego games are pretty good for her at this point. She just likes watching the building. She thinks that's really cool. But she's into Star Wars. She's into everything Pixar at this point. But we're not going too much into kind of the nerd culture at this point because most of it's pretty violent. Even Star Wars and stuff like that. Like just watching the beginning of Star Wars, it was like, okay, Vader is really bad. Like I forgot how bad he is.
And speaking of pop culture violence, like I've been trying to watch Daredevil with my 5-year-old nephew, and he is just crying all the time. Uncle Tim, please let me go. Why is the door locked? Why are these contraptions from A Clockwork Orange
turning it up
stretched to my
louder.
Oh, he knows Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, he does. Well, that's the first
Tim
we
made him
watched.
watch it. Yeah.
Okay.
These toothpicks in your eyes will make sense at the end of this movie.
Stick with me. I promise.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. What about you, Kyle?
As she's getting older, I'm trying not to push too hard. Like I really want to. Like I really want to. Like let's watch Star Wars.
Kyle,
let's do all this stuff.
I was over at your place. Your craft room is entirely themed after Portal.
Yeah, but
and it's an amazing job, by the way. There's two mirrors that, like, the way that they're reflecting and the kind of border around them, like, it looks like they're portals, and it's all,
there's companion
orange and
cubes
blue
in there.
It's that you're pulling it off.
But to be fair, that's my wife's room.
Yeah.
Like, she's the super nerd too. But in terms of like what I'm trying to feed to Claire in terms of like nerd culture,
Force feed.
Yeah, is I'm trying to back off as much as I can. And I mean, it's hard because you really want to show her all this stuff and be like, don't you think this is really cool? But as she's getting a little older, she's getting more conversational. I can see her actually liking specific things now. So I'm trying the best I can to sort of sneak things to her and let her find them on my own. In terms of things that she's sort of seen me enjoying and been really getting into, she really likes Splatoon.
Okay.
The lobby area is just the most hilarious thing in the world, and she loves to say "stay fresh" when the two anchors
That's great. It's
sign
an
off.
awesome catchphrase.
Like, she loves it. The little blue guys are just the funniest things ever. Period. Nothing makes her
little blue guys. Which ones? Like when you turn into a squid and go through the
No, like in the lobby area, there's the normal people, but then there's these little blue squid guys just walking around. You'll notice them because they're hilarious, Tim. They're just the funniest.
Oh wait, no, I couldn't see them through my tears of laughter.
Exactly.
That's what it was. Okay.
But we asked her what her favorite superhero was the other day, and she said the Joker.
Oh,
So I'm
nice.
a little worried about that. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be. But
One thing I'll point out, though, in terms of the Joker, and for kids like ages 1 to 3, they do sell Joker toys.
Yeah, they do.
She's got a little plastic guy.
Yeah, so
She's
Evie has
smiling,
one of
yeah.
those too and loves them, but it's like, that's kind of dark if you think about
this
it.
man
Like,
has shot someone in the spine.
In her universe, Batman and Joker work together to save baby animals. So it's a much different canon. So
They're friends.
they're friends. They get along. Yeah.
One more thing I'll throw on top of that. Evie's favorite thing to watch is the first episode 7 teaser trailer.
Oh, weird.
She loves it. Like, she thinks it's the coolest thing, and she'll say again. And the crescendo of music when the theme kicks in, when the Falcon comes out, a big smile gets on her face. And the whole time I'm just like, good. Excellent.
My daughter's the opposite of that. When that trailer premiered, I was like, "Hey, Claire, you want to watch the trailer with me?" I actually took like a little video of it, and she just turned to me and went, "No." And that was
We must rescue the baby animals. Joker and Batman are waiting for me. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry, I think that is the email of the week. So
That's pretty good.
Yeah. That is so. Again, if you have any emails that you want us to read, whether it's just pitching a hypothesis, or sort of like a theoretical situation, hypothetical, or it's a burning question or something, please email those to podcast@gameof4.com. And stay tuned for the next segment.
There's a category of question you generally try to avoid, right?
What's that?
Don't you like what is your favorite this or favorite that, or do you guys do that usually?
Favorite this or that? I don't know. We're kind of open to anything.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought that there was one episode where it was like, don't ask us our favorite, RPG or whatever.
Yeah, I mean those kind of conversations can run a little stale, but like if it's a question that you have to set up a little bit rather than just kind of like, what's your guys' favorite open world games? Those fall flat a little bit. But if there's a little bit something to it, if you think there's a little bit of meat to that question, it could get a conversation going. Those are the kind that we're looking for. So
All those questions were great.
yeah, they have been
fantastic.
great. So please
Good
keep it up. But yeah, for the next segment, we're gonna kind of take some time to reflect on the life and career and works of Nintendo's late president Satoru Iwata. So please stay tuned for that. All right, for the final segment of the Game Informer show, as we mentioned at the top of the show, surprise news from the last weekend that Satoru Iwata died. Nintendo's president since, I think, like 2002.
Yeah, president and CEO.
President and CEO. Yeah. We had some news, I think, right before last E3 that he was going to be sitting out last year's E3 due to health reasons.
Yeah, just a vague health issues.
Yeah, they were not specified at the time.
No. And then I remember that, there was some, it's one of those things where like once you're surprised by a tragedy like this, you kind of go back and look and see were there any more hints or anything like that. And, I remember there were some Nintendo Directs where it's like, Wada's looking a little thin.
Yeah.
And then, the news was that it was cancer that took him this weekend. But I think a lot of people that maybe tune into Game Informer know Iwata from his Nintendo Directs, just sort of like a spokesperson for Nintendo, making a lot of announcements, and having an awesome sense of humor in those Directs, especially, or whether it was E3 presentations when they were still doing press conferences. But the guy, he was with Nintendo since the early '80s. He started. I was going back to his GDC talk in 2005, where he gave the keynote, and he talks about, he reflects on just playing Pong for the first time, which is one of those common stories for developers who'd been in the game for a long time, and then he clicks over into trying to go to college for game design. He's like, well, this doesn't exist, so it's computer sciences kind of path, and creating games on his on his calculator, and trying to meet up in Tokyo, or it may have been Kyoto. I can't remember. Somewhere in Japan, like where the very first dedicated, sort of department store had a dedicated PC section,
right?
And meeting a bunch of people who were also interested in games and PC development, and just finding out that that group of friends went on to form HAL Laboratory, and just seeing hearing the origin story for Satoru Iwata. Just remind me that, man, this guy's so much more than the president of Nintendo.
Yeah, he's pretty much what you want out of anyone working in the game industry. Just a huge fan of video games, and that's that. He played them, he wanted to make them, and he did, and he was very successful at it. And then he became this big voice for Nintendo, and it wasn't. He was so in tune with his audience. They had so much fun with those directs. Even the last Nintendo Direct for E3, where they turned into Muppets.
Yeah.
Who does that? You don't see that. It's just, and that's for the fans. They were so in tune with that audience. It's not, just losing one of the big voices for Nintendo. It's like one of the big voices for video games. I mean, he was such a champion of games.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also interesting that, that there are different kinds of executives in any kind of business, but like in video games, like he worked his way, like he was in Nintendo and like worked his way up to the top of that company versus, and this is like nothing against Reggie, but like Reggie came to Nintendo from, I think he was at Pizza Hut beforehand, like there is a breed of executive that is just generally good at, capital B business and goes from industry to industry. And then Iwata was definitely one who was just like bred in the video game industry and knew it so well and came up in it and just in a very sort of unique way and held a very unique position.
Yeah, and I mean like Tim, you went into it. Like a lot of younger players might not realize that he was a programmer. He was writing code for games. Like he designed Balloon Fight, and there's this sort of story of him basically fixing Smash Brothers Melee.
Well, because at that point he would have been the president of HAL.
Yeah, he was managing. Like he was not designing games at that point. He was signing checks or whatever executives do. I'm not an executive. I don't know.
That's pretty much right.
Yeah, but he was a busy guy, and he took time to go down the bug. Look at the list of bugs for Smash Brothers Melee and work to help fix it, which is just crazy.
Yeah, rolled up his sleeves and started coding.
That was even. I went and read the story before we got on here. Recap the interview where he brought that up, and that's kind of how he explained it. He was like, I was sitting on the along the row of programmers helping them there. It would be like. If whatever company you work for, if your CEO came down to help you do just this, you would perceive as kind of a minor part of your job, and he's sitting there helping you to make sure it gets done. It's amazing.
Another anecdote I had read along those lines was of that was Melee trying to get released on time was the big thing. Was just we don't know if we're going to hit release, and Iwata just rolled up his sleeves and helped get it done. There was another one for Pokemon Stadium I had read where he just went back and looked at the code for, I think it was Pokemon Red and Blue or Red and Green for Japan that would have been compatible with Stadium, and he just went in there and sort of analyzed the code and helped make it so that those two versions of the game could talk to each other.
Oh wow.
And I know all about Pokemon Stadium. I remember how magical I thought the fact that those things could even talk to each other were, but the fact that the programmer that would go on to be Nintendo's president was responsible for that. He also HAL obviously helped spearhead with Sakurai the Smash Brothers series from the beginning on the N64, which has become like one of the biggest Nintendo franchises of all time. Also, the Kirby series.
Yep.
Was under his direction, and these are just things from when he was a programmer.
Yeah, I think Pokemon Silver and Gold as well. He
worked involved in that.
Yeah, you're
but
right.
it's just awesome, like Joe said, to see that he came from those roots. Like just as a fan of games who wanted to be part of the industry, got his way into the industry and worked his way up to the top of Nintendo. I mean, he's just an incredible man.
That's right. Earthbound as well.
Yeah.
Which that was one of those things that I was thinking of recently, where it's like, I know that he was involved with that franchise, and then for I think it was the Nintendo, they don't call them directs. What do they call them? Digital events for E3. Iwata was on that for the announcement of Mother coming out to Virtual Console, which was like so sought after by fans, and it's the fact that he was able to soak up some of that appreciation from fans. It's great.
Iwata Asks, that internet series of questions was fantastic. Like he'd just communicate with the community that way, answer your questions, stuff like that.
Because under his, since he has been president at Nintendo since 2002, since he began that, position, it was Club Nintendo under him. It was the Iwata Asks, Nintendo Directs, and all of those things. I think especially Nintendo Directs and Iwata Asks are just like about like cutting through everything, like essentially doing what press has done for years, just like getting straight to the fans and like the community. And that was one thing I remember, years ago that there would be criticism of Nintendo would be like, they don't understand their audience as much. They don't understand what we want. And while no developer publisher can like deliver on that 100% of the time, like Nintendo has made super obvious and super successful strides, whether it's trying to, oh, well, you want to play Smash Brothers at this, this pro gaming event, like we understand, we're going back on that, or trying to work with them in that way, or bringing back, like the Nintendo World Championship at the C3, which was like one of the highlights of the show.
Yeah.
That direction has just, I feel like, done a world of good for that company.
Yeah. And I know like people give Nintendo grief today for the Wii U, I think, but like consider where they would be without the Wii coming before it. Like the Wii was the winner of the last console generation.
And the DS is the second best selling system of all time, next to PlayStation 2, and that's Iwata.
Yeah, right. those happened under Iwata's watch, and I think I know
some of them may have come down from Yamauchi, which was but yeah, he helped guide those. He was the president of the company when those were happening.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm like, I not being an insider at Nintendo specifically, I don't know where all of the responsibility lay for all of that. Apart from just the fact that like one of Nintendo's strengths, I think, has been like finding the things that gamers don't know they want. Like any company can be like, you want better graphics? Here's better graphics. But to actually to assess where there are opportunities in the market and to sort of experiment with them, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But,
right.
And again, like I don't know how much of that Iwata is responsible for, but definitely like during his tenure at that company, like it found a lot of success doing that.
Yeah,
so.
I've always called Nintendo kind of like Willy Wonka, where they're trying to make something that isn't out there yet. They're trying to invent the next big thing, not just kind of follow the leader at this point. And it hasn't paid off all the time. Like obviously the Wii U,
right?
Cool in concept, but again, you got to kind of keep up with the Joneses. In addition to innovating, it was underpowered. Third parties couldn't latch on to bring their games over to that system.
And speaking of the financial failings of the Wii U, that brings up another point, which is that like Iwata publicly, I think, halved his salary to try to help take some of the blow out of what that was doing to Nintendo at the time. Which I'm not super familiar with the business numbers side of things. I'm not sure if that's something that happens frequently, but if it is, it's something I don't hear about, especially within the industry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like he was the guy that would, like you were talking about these risks. Sometimes they don't like the fact that there was somebody in a position at that high point in the industry who was willing to kind of take those extreme risks is just awesome.
Yeah,
and he's going to be missed.
Well, his legacy will continue on, I think, with the NX. You know, that was kind of developed under him at this point. We haven't seen what it is yet, but we're going to get hopefully a look at it next year. But that's definitely a part of, you know, his legacy at Nintendo.
On top of that, you know, the mobile partnership with DNA, which is one of the biggest, you know, if you had to like create a short list of some of the biggest changes that Nintendo has gone through or is going to go through, the partnership with DNA to get Nintendo franchises or IP on mobile platforms is like one of the biggest changes for that company. Obviously, we don't know how it'll pay off, but it's that happened under Iwata is a milestone for that company.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Another interesting point is, you know, Yamauchi is the former president of Nintendo, and it had been a succession of, you know, blood relatives or you know, family members by marriage or something. And Iwata was the first president of Nintendo to kind of break that streak at that level. And it's just such a cool story based on the fact that, you know, he did, just like we were talking about, start as a gamer, as someone who loved playing games, and then as a developer, and then eventually as, you know, the CEO and president. During that GDC talk, and I think people may have seen this quote kind of floating around, which I'm just paraphrasing, which is where he talks about, you know, it says that I'm the president and CEO of Nintendo, I'm an executive on my business card, you know, I'm a programmer in my mind, and I'm a gamer at heart, and that he used that to kind of guide him through, you know, managing at the very top level of Nintendo. And I think that has shown throughout that you know, kind of company over the last, what is that, like since 2002, like 13 years, which is remarkable. And, you know, we were talking in the last segment about, you know, just feeling at ease with developers like Miyamoto or with Aonuma. You know, I never had the privilege of being able to talk with Iwata or meeting with him or interviewing him at all, but just sort of I'm putting you at ease, like just very, very genial personality, just very approachable, you know, self-aware and able to poke fun at himself, along with, you know, the other Nintendo personalities like Miyamoto and Reggie Fils-Aimé and stuff. Like, you just go back to like the Jim Henson Muppet thing from last year's or this year's Nintendo digital event, and just like calling back to the banana bit, or the first time like just Iwata like a Muppet of Iwata sitting in a chair staring at bananas and then just like startlingly looking at the camera, or just calling back to when, you know, Iwata first introduced the whole concept of the Nintendo Directs, and he just kind of did at the camera, the sort of like, I'm, you know, direct to you, and how that became sort of like his sort of gesture, like sort of his trademark thing. And like
they even used it in that Smash Brothers video, or like that
Fight,
Smash video where it's like there was his like special attack where he sort of went like,
that's right,
like headbutted Reggie.
That's right.
One of my favorite things, I think, just ever will be the Tamagotchi Life Nintendo Direct, where like they just showed how bizarre that game was, and they inserted all the executives in there.
Yeah.
And there was like that scene between like Samus and Iwata and Reggie Fils-Aimé and Miyamoto, where Samus was like, I love you, Iwata. And I just remember like watching it and just being like, I can't believe like Nintendo executives are like just inserting themselves in here, and it's so perfect and so weird. And I love this. I love what you guys are doing.
And you know, it's not to say that other companies don't do a good job of getting their, you know, executives out there in a way that humanizes them and makes them, you know, relatable. But just the fact that Nintendo pulled it off in a way that I don't think that we've seen done quite the same way, because there's this level of quirkiness that's involved. But on top of that, the fact that how far that company came from sort of a reputation before, which was just, you know, it was kind of, there weren't really faces for the games that were being made, put like brought out. It didn't seem
outside of Miyamoto. You know, Miyamoto at E3 would come out with, you know, Link's shield and the Master Sword, and you know, people would be like, okay, that's awesome, and they kind of expanded upon that, and were really in tune, really in tune with the fans and the games themselves, and what kind of made them tick, and what we wanted to see from it. And man, the three of them were so good together. It's sad day. I felt like, you know, I couldn't wait to see what was coming next from NX. Like, I really want Nintendo to be there, to be that big third entity in the console race again.
And that's part and parcel with, you know, Iwata presenting that and spearheading that whole strategy. And, you know, it's a kind of a shock to realize that, well, next time we get details about that, he won't be part of that.
Yeah. Well, and Reiner, you were covering Nintendo back when Yamauchi was in charge. Like, contract.
Why are you laughing at that?
Oh no!
You're old.
You're old.
No. I'm laughing at the comparison I'm thinking of, which is like we have this image in our heads of a very sort of like genial and sort of goofy Iwata, and I think that's very different from the image that Yamauchi cultivated. Is that right?
Yeah. You didn't have access. You didn't often see Yamauchi out there doing anything. But Iwata, we'd be at E3. I remember hanging out with Jeff Keighley behind the scenes at Nintendo's booth where they do kind of private demos for press. And Iwata came up and talked for a bit, and that was super cool. And it was just super casual. And he's exactly what you would expect him, what you see on the camera. That's him. Yeah. And just having that kind of access, with Miyamoto, you talking to him recently, me talking to him recently. That's great. Nintendo has really opened up under his regime. You know, like since he took over, even Reggie, just being there for the fans and for the press and all that has been fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm really confident that that's going to continue because I don't think it's been anything but positive. That style of communication with fans and that sort of messaging and stuff. It's I don't know. In my 6 years here at Game Informer and like staying this close to the industry, I don't know if I've felt, there's plenty of developers that have had successful careers and that have, sadly passed away, but there's this outpouring of love and sort of well wishes for Iwata and Nintendo, like Iwata's family and Nintendo from like the community and fellow developers,
from all corners.
Yeah. It's insane how much people have turned out and just like swaths of like people making these beautiful pictures of Nintendo characters, like there's like these touching Nintendo characters like Mario with his hat off, or things that initially might seem like like a little bit cheesy, but like then it's just like this is incredibly sincere and hitting me like really really close to home, and it's been incredible to see. I know there's a story on Game Informer right now of just a collection of different, tweets of developers and other industry people just kind of sharing their condolences and how much it's hit them.
And it's just to call out that Ben Rees also put together a good sort of anthology of Iwata's work and his career, which is really good too. So.
Absolutely.
And Miyamoto now is going to be standing in as president, right?
Well,
for the
temporarily.
interim.
Yeah. I don't know what's up for the future for Nintendo.
Yeah.
Weren't there two? I thought there were two people.
Yeah, there are two people. I'm sorry, I don't remember the other person's name. It wasn't someone I recognized, in terms of like Nintendo executive order. But
I'm not certain.
It's someone who'd been, I don't remember the name, really heavy in the sort of like hardware engineering side of things, I think.
Yeah. Well, if you want to do, if you want to sort of express your kind of, how should I put this? This is a good time to just, next time you play Super Smash Brothers or play a Kirby game, or if you're playing Earthbound or something, actually anything that Nintendo's done
pretty much
for the last,
he was at least producer on like every game for the last 15 years.
If you Google Iwata's name and credits and look at that, like he has touched so many games, and even games that aren't within the Nintendo, he's gotten special thanks and so many credits. And next time you specifically boot up a Nintendo game, just think about what he did there, and it's, you can get so caught up in like, especially Nintendo's just super polished, colorful, like lighthearted games that you forget that, oh man, like actual people make these. Iwata specifically, his run in the game industry ended far too soon. And it's nothing short of a tragedy, but I'm still excited to see what Nintendo has in store, to see the continuation of what Iwata began, and see that kind of play out its course.
Yeah, and hopefully whoever ends up taking over, filling his role, continues what he started. Like builds upon that. Because I think there's something magical there what they're doing right now.
Absolutely,
they've certainly instilled a confidence in like, we will continue what Iwata did best. You know what I mean? Like, I really get that from like statements from Miyamoto and the company and Reggie Fils-Aimé and stuff like that. Like, I'm not worried about Nintendo, even though I'm sad about Iwata.
That's a good way to put it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, basically what I want to do is I want to jump into like Super Mario Galaxy. I want to jump into Splatoon again, because like, gosh, like those are experiences that I just turn around to, and especially Galaxy, of just like, there are so many colors and things going on that it's just bright and cheerful and fun. And, I think Iwata had that kind of come across with his personality as well. And I don't know, it makes me feel good. I feel like it's a good time for those types of games. But yeah, that's kind of
It's a good way to remember him.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's my plan. So. Other than that, yeah, if you have Nintendo memories that you want to share with us, feel free to email podcast@GameInformer.com or any
In the comments, we
in the
read
comments
the
as
comments
well.
on YouTube and
Yeah.
GameInformer.com.
Yeah, please.
We're always in there. So
please share your memories and some of the games that maybe you'll be playing, some Nintendo games that you're appreciating now. But that is going to call it for this week's podcast. Thanks for joining me, guys.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, and you can subscribe on iTunes or subscribe on our YouTube channel. But we'll be back next week with another episode of the Game Informer Show. Thanks.